this video will tell you how to solve the various question types that we get in PTE Reading. Hi everyone, I'm Vivian and I'm an IELTS, OET, PTE and CELPIP trainer. I'm CELTA certified and I have helped a lot of students get amazing scores in their IELTS, PTE, OET and CELPIP examination. Let's talk about PTE Reading. A lot of you have said that you find PTE Reading really difficult, and this video will tell you how to solve the various question types that we get in PTE Reading. Starting with the first question types, which is reading multiple choice single answer questions. So we also have multiple choice single answer, multiple choice multiple answers as well. This is about how to solve the single answer question. Okay, so if you can see my screen here, it says read the text and answer the multiple choice questions by selecting the correct response. Only one response is correct. Okay, one of the things that I'm going to tell you over here is you may not need to read the whole text, but just go ahead and read and try and find out from the question what are the keywords and then try and mark it. Okay, so if you can see on my screen here, it says what differentiated the Declaratory Act from the Stamped Act as per the passage. Okay, now remember one good thing about using proper nouns. So Declaratory Act and Stamp Act would mean that these forms would not change. What we are looking at is what differentiated that from each other. Okay, so I'm able to find Declaratory Act here, Stamp Act here. If I were to just go ahead and read this part really quickly, I'm going to skim through. It talks about the Stamp Act only. Does it talk about Declaratory Act over here at all? Declaratory Act starts from here. So the British immediately followed the repeal of the Stamp Act with the passage of
a Declaratory Act in 1766. This act asserted Parliament's right to legislate for the colonies in all cases. Many colonies refused to accept the idea that they were represented in the Parliament
and ignored the Declaratory Act just as they had the Stamp Act. Okay, so we're looking for something that makes it different. If I read here, it says this act asserted Parliament's right to legislate for those colonies in cases whatsoever. So that is what was different about the act. If I would read the options over here, the first option says both were passed by an act of the British Parliament. This is again a similarity. I'm looking for a difference, so this option will not be acceptable. While the Stamp Act pertained to economic matters, the Declaratory Act concerned itself with litigation. This talks about a contrast. So this definitely is a differentiation. The Declaratory Act repealed the Stamp Act. That's not mentioned anywhere over here. The colonial Americans did not have to struggle to explain their resistance to the Declaratory Act because they just went ahead and ignored it as they would with the Stamp Act. So in a way, this is also a similarity. The only thing that is a difference is the second option, which is while the Stamp Act pertained to economic matters, the Declaratory Act concerned itself with legislation. So I'm going to mark this and see what the answer comes here. As you see, my answer is correct. This is my platform from where I go ahead and make all my students practice. You would notice that this also gives you the explanation, basically telling you why this answer is correct. So for example, if you were to get an answer incorrect here, it will go ahead and point out the other answer that is correct and why that is correct for you to understand that as well. Okay, that's something that my platform does, and this is the reason why students have been able to get a 90 in their PT examination as well. Okay, now moving on to the next question type, which is multiple choice, multiple answers. So when you get this kind of a question, if the passage is very long and the question is not very direct, one recommendation would be break the passage down. Okay, read maybe half of the passage and then try and match it with the options, and then read the second half and then try and match it with the options. Okay, so I'll read the first half quickly. From among the first fossil finds until Acanthostega's features were undeniably fish-like. Okay, so it talks about it lived 360 million years ago
in what is now Eastern Greenland, identified by Erik Jarvik of the Swedish Museum of Natural History in Stockholm on the basis of partial skull rods. Although in many ways animal proved to be exactly the kind of anatomical intermediary between fish and full-blown tetrapods that experts might have imagined, it told a different story from the one that predicted. Here was a creature that had legs and feet but was otherwise ill-equipped for terrestrial existence, something important to note here. And Acanthostega's limbs lacked proper anchors to support the weight of animal's weight on land, looking more like paddles for swimming, and although it had lungs, its ribs were too short to prevent the collapse of the chest cavity once out of water.
In fact, many of the Acanthostega's features were undeniably fish-like. Okay, so it talks a little bit about the features. So let's look here. It speaks a lot about the features, so I think they're trying to indicate that. So tetrapods may not be the missing link between terrestrial and aquatic animals. That's not the answer. Tetrapods may have evolved legs and feet before, not after they ventured on land. So this is an option here because it says here was a creature that had legs and feet but was otherwise ill-equipped for terrestrial existence. So that means they already had legs and feet. They were fish-like, but even before they could go ahead and come on land. Okay, so this is definitely an option. The transition from fish to tetrapod was a long one indeed. Is not mentioned here. Tetrapods were well suited for life in cold climates. Not mentioned here as well. The precursors of Acanthostega never made it to land. No, not mentioned here as well. Tetrapod is a mysterious creature often sighted in Greenland. It is not in Greenland right now, so this is also not the option. This definitely is not the option, the last one. I'm going to read further now. The bones of the forearm displayed proportions reminiscent
of the pectoral fin of this, and the rear of the skeleton showed a deep or-shaped tail supporting bony rays. Okay, moreover, the beast still had gills in addition to lungs. The animal, though clearly a tetrapod, was primarily aquatic creature whose
immediate forerunners were essentially fish that never left the water. So this is what the answer is. It's option number 5. The precursors of the Acanthostega never made it to land, because it says over here that they were essentially fish that never left the waters, forerunners of the Acanthostega. The discovery forced scholars to rethink the sequence in which the key changes to the skeleton took place. This meant that researchers needed to reconsider the ecological circumstances under which the limbs developed. So if I were to go ahead and mark this, it says legs and feet, but otherwise ill-equipped for terrestrial existence. So this is my option here. And then, although the clearly tetrapod, immediate forerunners were essentially fish that never left the water. So it's this answer as well. Let me go ahead and mark this and see what options I get here. See, it also tells you why option 1 cannot be confirmed, why option 2 is correct, why option 3 is incorrect, why option 5 is correct, and why option 6 is incorrect. My platform also tells you all of this, and this answer is correct here. So remember, you have to go ahead and try and attempt the answer in this way to get the best score possible. Moving on to the next question type, which is your reorder paragraphs. This is where things get really interesting. I personally find this to be a really interesting kind of a question type. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and now talk about this. So for reorder paragraph, my technique would always be that, remember, try and think of it like a story. Okay, you're basically talking about an intro of a kind of the entire subject. There would generally be an extension of some kind. Okay, then comes another contrast if required, and then closing. Now in this, because there are 5 paragraphs, there'll be intro, extension, contrast, closing, or intro, extension, contrast, extension, and then closing. You have to look at it that way. Okay, so what could be the intro over here? The intro over here would be the German invasion of Poland officially triggered a Second World War. Okay, then I would talk about what happened. So in the beginning, Britain and France were hopeful that Poland should be able to defend her borders. Okay, but Polish forces could not defend a long border. They lacked compact defense lines, and additionally the supply lines were also poorly protected. And meanwhile, the world had woken up to a potential atomic energy, and countries were conducting tests to exploit the same. Okay, so I start by giving an intro generally by saying what triggered the Second World War. Then what was people's thinking about that world war over here, which is Britain and France were hopeful that Poland should be able to defend her borders. This is what we are seeing over here. But contrast being that Polish forces could not defend the borders. So my Second World War, the extension is the next sentence, where Britain and France were hopeful that Poland should be able to defend. Then comes my contrast, which is but Polish forces could not defend a long border. Then my extension of the contrast, they lacked compact defense lines, and additionally their supply lines were also poorly protected. And lastly is my conclusion or extension of a kind, because this is what was left behind. I can't add it anywhere else. Meanwhile, the world had woken up to the potential of atomic energy, and countries were conducting tests to exploit the same. So let me submit and see what answer I get. This is correct. Now, even though there were 5 options, I only got a 4 in this, because generally the question is for 4 options only. All right. It tells you why the answer is correct by giving you this information over here. Pause and read through, and this will give you clarity on how good my test portal is. Okay. Now moving on to the second last question type, which is fill in the blanks. All right, this is the question that's coming up on the screen. You'll have to simply go ahead and drag the answers here. This is where collocations are extremely important. Okay. So please remember, you need to also understand what is the word choice that you need to go ahead and use. Okay. So I still claim, like a child, that there must be a father who rescues me, who watches me, who punishes me, a father who likes me when I am dash. Okay. Now, what is a dash over here? Sympathy can't be added here. Childish, I don't think is required because the word child is already used in that statement already. I can't use overcome here because when I am overcome is not correct. When I am praised is not correct. When I am chided would be contrasted because chided is another word for not being happy about something. So when I'm obedient, a father who likes me when I'm obedient is the right match here because it matches my way of acting like a child because children are obedient. Okay, so let's drag this on top. Who is flattered by my dash and angry because of my disobedience. All right, who's flattered by my childish cannot be used over here. All right, who's flattered by my sympathy cannot be used over here. Flattered by my overcome cannot be used here. Flattered by my praise and angry because of my disobedience. Okay. Quite obviously, the majority of people have in their personal development not dashed this infantile stage, and the word over here would be overcome because they haven't overcome this infantile stage. And the belief in God to most people is the belief in helping father or dash illusion. What would the word be over here? Would be a childish illusion because I can't use sympathy, chided, or controlled. Let's go ahead and submit and see what the answers are. The answers are correct. Okay. I hope this makes sense here. I'm going to move on to the next question type now. Moving on to the next question type, which is fill in the blanks in the drop down. The question's coming up on the screen. This is where you will try and find the answer from the drop down. Once again, collocations are extremely important. Okay. It is interesting to note that the main dash the Chinese have drawn from their past performance is their failure to promote science and technology. Okay, so what will be the word here? Let's go ahead and see. Okay, now generally in most cases, what I've seen is two options would not be a match, so you can eliminate them, and two would be is where you generally get confused out of the four. Okay, themes and concepts I don't think would match here. You could use lessons and ideas. The main ideas the Chinese have drawn from their past performance is their failure. From failure, you generally draw lessons. You don't draw ideas from failures, right? So the answer would be lessons over here. Okay. As strategic tools for empowerment, they also point to the absence of mechanisms and motivations in the economic activity to dash dependence on science and technology. Okay. So you can't I don't think reduce and hinder would be the words over here because reduce and hinder is generally to take something away or to limit something. They basically want to enhance their dependence on technology over here. That's what the first sentence states. So I think it'll be either project or promote. You can't project dependence, but rather you can promote dependence. So the word here would be promote. Okay. Similarly, they hold that their scientific and technological efforts were not dashed towards economic growth. Okay, so let's look at the options over here. Were not, I don't think brought or delivered would work here. Were not meant towards economic growth or oriented. I think oriented is a better word because oriented generally means that they were not basically aiming towards a particular thing. So they were not goal oriented towards that. This talks about a goal that they want, so oriented is a better word here. As a consequence, they conclude a large number of scientific and technological advancements were not converted into productive forces as they were too far removed from China's immediate economic and social needs. The Chinese vision is therefore aimed at dash state-of-the-art technology to enhance the nation's overall power and strength. Okay. Now, once again, two options would not be required here. Testing and imploding, I don't think is important here. They are not trying to enhance, but rather they're trying to exploit something. So exploiting is the better word over here. Okay. To enhance the nation's overall power, to improve the people's living standards, to focus on resolving problems encountered in large-scale industrial and agricultural production, aid to effectively control and alleviate pressures brought on by population, resources, and the environment, because they were talking about um, pressures that are brought on by population, resources, and planning, demography, expenses would not really fit here. Environment is the only word that's fitting here because they're talking about how it relieves pressure on population, resources, and environment in general, things that they can pull out technology, etc. from. So the answer would be environment. Remember, this is where your word choice in English is important because if you are someone who's not really well versed with the language, you may face difficulty in trying to find the right option. Remember, two generally would match and two would not match at all in this case. Okay, let's submit and see what answer we get here. Yay, the answer is correct. So and it also tells you why the options are it is. Okay, so are what they are. So lessons one, or lessons from past failures promote their failure to promote science. Technology now propels them to promote the same in the future. Oriented towards economic growth is another clue for number three. Exploiting for number four. Why is it exploiting? And why environment is number five is all mentioned over here. Okay, so I'm hoping that this really helps you to understand how reading is done in PTE. And if you have any questions and require training, do feel free to reach out to us. I'll be more than happy to train you. My team and I can help you get excellent scores in your PTE examination. Thank you so much, and DM for any questions.